This is Roger Hibbert and his beautiful wife Elizabeth, and today we're going to be in the 32nd chapter of we're going to be in the 32nd chapter of Second Chronicles in the Old Testament. We're talking about Hezekiah, and we're going to witness one of the biggest miracles of the Bible today. There's a lot, it was a good, huge miracle, and there's a lot of miracles in the Bible, and it's great, and it's a great history book. Well, a little background, Assyria was they were the big nation at the time. They were whipping everybody. They'd taken the northern 10 tribes among other nations. They were the nation to contend with at that time. They just were unbeatable, supposedly. And they had conquered everybody, but they hadn't conquered Jerusalem. And amazing thing happens. And so it is really great. And it happens in this chapter. So, yeah, it's going to be this chapter. Hot dog. All right. After these things, and Hezekiah had just turned Judah into a real prosperous country after being just a total wipeout after his father Ahaz had just disappeared from honoring the Lord. But Hezekiah honors the Lord and brings it right back into great deal. And today you're going to find out the destruction of the great, big, strong country of Syria. Okay, after these things and these acts of faithfulness, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded Judah and encamped against the fortified cities, thinking and invaded Judah and encamped against the fortified cities, thinking to win them for himself. And sorry about that. I'm trying to do something here. And when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come and intended to fight against Jerusalem, so Assyria was like the big nation at the time, and he planned with Sennacherib had come and intended to fight against Jerusalem. He planned with his officers and his mighty men to stop the water of the springs that were outside the city, and they helped him. A great many people were gathered, and they stopped all the springs and the brook that flowed through the land, saying, "Why should the kings of Assyria come and find much water?" He set to work resolutely and built up all the wall that was broken down and raised towers upon it. And outside it, he built another wall, and he strengthened the Millo in the city of David. He also made weapons and shields in abundance, and he set combat commanders over the people and gathered them together in the square at the gate of the city and spoke encouragingly to them, saying, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or dismayed before the king of Assyria and all the horde that is with him, for there are more with us than with him." Do you hear that? With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. And the people took confidence from the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. We ought to put those words in our minds and in our belief and have no unbelief. So Sennacherib blasphemes. After this, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, who was besieging Lachish with all his forces, sent his servants to Jerusalem to Hezekiah, king of Judah, and to all the people of Judah who were in Jerusalem, saying, "Thus says Sennacherib, king of Assyria, on what are you trusting that you endure the siege in Jerusalem? Is not Hezekiah misleading you that he might give you over to die by famine and by thirst when he tells you, the Lord our God will deliver us from the hand of the king of Assyria? Has not this same Hezekiah taken away his high places and his altars, and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, before one altar you shall worship, and on it you shall burn your sacrifices. Do you not know what I and my fathers have done to all the peoples of other lands? Were the gods of the nations of those lands at all able to deliver their lands out of my hand? Who among all the gods of those nations that my fathers devoted to destruction was able to deliver his people from my hand, that our God should be able to deliver you from my hand? Now therefore do not let Hezekiah deceive you or mislead you in this fashion, and do not believe him. For no God of any nation or kingdom has been able to deliver his people from my hand or from the hand of my fathers. How much less will your God deliver you out of my hand? Let me tell you something. You don't want to blaspheme the God of Israel. So to learn a lesson right here. And his servants said still more against the Lord God and against his servant Hezekiah. And he wrote letters to cast contempt on the Lord, the God of Israel, and to speak against him, saying, like the gods of the nations of the lands who have not delivered their people from my hand, so the God of Hezekiah will not deliver his people from my hand. And they shouted it with a loud voice in the language of Judah to the people of Jerusalem who were on the wall, to frighten and terrify them in order that they might take the city. And they spoke of the God of Jerusalem as they spoke of the gods of the people of the earth, which are the work of men's hands. Then Hezekiah the king and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, prayed because of this and cried to heaven. And the Lord sent an angel who cut off all the mighty warriors and commanders and officers in the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned with shame of face to his own land. And when he came into the house of his God, some of his own sons struck him down with a sword. So the Lord saved Hezekiah. You know, there's a chapter that goes along with this over in Kings. 186,000 men were killed in one night by the angel of the Lord. That is a bunch of divisions. That's what, about 8-9 divisions of men were killed in one night as they surrounded Jerusalem. How would you like to wake up and 186,000 of your men are dead? Wow. Well, that's what happened. Just a little extra infill there about what, like, well, they struck down some men, 186,000. So the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and from the hand of all his enemies, and he provided for them on every side. And many brought gifts to the Lord, to Jerusalem, and precious things to Hezekiah, king of Judah, so that he was exalted in the sight of all nations from that time onward. In those days, Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death, and he prayed to the Lord, and he answered him and gave him a sign. But Hezekiah did not make return according to the benefit done to him, for his heart was proud. Therefore the wrath came upon him in Judah and Jerusalem. But Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of God did not come upon them in the days of Hezekiah. And Hezekiah had very great riches and honor, and he made for himself treasuries for silver, for gold, for precious stones, for spices, for shields, and for all kinds of costly vessels, storehouses also for the yield of grain, wine, and oil, and stalls for all kinds of cattle and sheepfolds. He likewise provided cities for himself and flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him very great possessions. This same Hezekiah closed the upper outlet of the waters of Gihon and directed them down to the west side of the city of David. And Hezekiah prospered in all his works, and so in the matter of the envoys of the princess of Babylon, who had been sent to him to inquire about the sign that had been done in the land, God left him to himself in order to test him and to know all that was in his heart. Now the rest of the acts Hezekiah and his good deeds, behold, they are written in the vision of Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. And Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the upper part of the tombs of the sons of David. And all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem did honor at his death, and Manasseh, his son, reigned in his place. Now I want to make a point here. Hezekiah was the son of Ahaz, one of the worst kings. And Ahaz took Judah, which had just crumbled to nothing, into this prosperous nation, and did it in 1 month. Now, as I said, his father was horrible, Ahaz, but not as horrible as his son, Manasseh. So it's just like a graph. You go up with God's blessings, you go down to the pit with his, when you are dishonoring God. And so here Hezekiah, this great king, was right in the middle of two of the very worst kings. One was his father, and the other was his son, Manasseh. What a horrible, horrible king Manasseh was. All right. And now we go to Ezekiel. We're in the 42nd chapter of Ezekiel. Now, at this same time, more or less, I would guess that we are at the same time contemporaries, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Ezekiel 42. So, yeah, contemporaries. Well, no, I'm sorry. They're not into Babylonian captivity yet. It's coming soon, right after Manasseh. Well, there's one other good king right after Manasseh, Josiah. So yeah, they're not quite contemporaries. So Ezekiel is after, he's a few generations later from what we just read. My apologies. But the reason I was bringing that up was Babylonian captivity, where Ezekiel is. The Babylonians had torn down the temple and all the city of Jerusalem. And so Ezekiel is prophesying over there in captivity, and he is prophesying about the temple that's going to be rebuilt and all of that. So that's where we are in the 42nd chapter of Ezekiel. Then he led me out into the outer court toward the north, and he brought me to the chambers that were opposite the separate yard and opposite the building on the north. The length of the building, whose door faced north, was 100 cubits, and the breadth 50 cubits. Facing the 20 cubits that belonged to the inner court, and facing the pavement that belonged to the outer court, was gallery against gallery in 3 stories. And before the chambers was a passage inward, 10 cubits wide and 100 cubits long, and their doors were on the north. Now the upper chambers were narrower, for the galleries took more away from them than from the lower and middle chambers of the building. For they were in 3 stories, and they had no pillars like the pillars of the courts. Thus the upper chambers were set back from the ground more than the lower and the middle ones. And there was a wall outside parallel to the chambers toward the outer court, opposite the chambers, 50 cubits long. For the chambers on the inner court were 50 cubits long, with those opposite the nave were 100 cubits long. Below the chambers was an entrance on the east side, as one enters them from the outer court. In the thickness of the wall of the court on the south, also opposite the yard and opposite the building, there were chambers with a passage in front of them. They were similar to the chambers on the north, of the same length and breadth, with the same exits and arrangements and doors as were the entrances of the chambers on the south. There was an entrance at the beginning of the passage before the corresponding wall on the east as one enters them. Then he said to me, the north chambers and the south chambers opposite the yard are the holy chambers, where the priest who approach the Lord shall eat the most holy offerings. There they shall put the most holy offerings, the grain offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering, for the place is holy. When the priests enter the holy place, they shall not go out of it into the outer court without laying there the garments in which they minister, for these are holy. They shall put on other garments before they go near to that which is for the people. Now when he had finished measuring the interior of the temple area, he led me out by the gate that faced east. Okay, sweetheart. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. He led me out by the gate that faced east and measured the temple area all around. He measured the east side with the measuring reed, 500 cubits by the measuring reed all around. He measured the north side, 500 cubits by the measuring reed all around. He measured the south side, 500 cubits by the measuring reed. Then he turned to the west side and measured 500 cubits by the measuring reed. He measured it on the four sides. It had a wall around it, 500 cubits long and 500 cubits broad, to make a separation between the holy and the common. Okay, so that's Ezekiel, the 42nd chapter. Ezekiel is envisioning the rebuilding and all of Jerusalem. Thank you.